Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Great networking event tonight in the club room with Win Again Academy. Check out their website. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we have Karl Mecklenburg on the show. Welcome to the Wolff Den.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Matt.
Yeah, great to have you on. I'm excited for a lot of reasons, but for the people in the audience who don't know who you are, give us the quick rundown and let's get to it.
Well, I was a linebacker for the Denver Broncos from 83 through 94. And now I'm a professional speaker. I travel the country doing about 40 events a year. Love the opportunity to make a difference in people's and businesses' lives.
It's
I like your hat, by the way, Matt. You
yeah,
can tell that's not one that just came out of the box.
Oh, this is old. I don't,
I think the 290 episodes you've been wearing that for every one of them.
It looks like it. For my audience who doesn't know, I'm a longtime Bronco fan. These are the first memorabilia that I ever had as a Bronco. Fell in love with the Broncos when Elway was drafted by the Yankees because I grew up in New Jersey and just thought, man, that's the coolest thing, right? A pitcher and a quarterback, and obviously he goes to the Broncos. I also grew up the Mets and Knicks because I was in New Jersey and those were sort of the teams. So it was an orange and blue thing that might have caught some of my attention too, and my old Beanie Baby. So
there you go.
A long-time Bronco fan, and started really when you came, because you came into the league with John, right?
Yeah. John was the first pick of the 1983 draft. I was the 310th pick of the 1983 draft, but I did get drafted.
When you got drafted, what was the feeling? Because obviously Elway was big news that year. That
was they didn't trade for John for a while. Actually, Gary Kubiak was going to be the guy. Gary was a 7th round pick in 83. He was running first team in training camp and stuff. He was going to be the man, and then all of a sudden they traded for Elway. And Gary was amazing with his approach to team play. I mean, the whole concept of, you got to understand who Gary Kubiak was. Gary Kubiak was a stud. Now, Gary Kubiak was an 8-time All-State high school athlete in Texas. I mean, to just be an all-state athlete once in Texas is pretty amazing. I mean, they got unbelievable athletes down there. So 8 times, twice in basketball, twice in baseball, twice in track, and twice in football. And then he went to Texas A&M and set all the records he could set at Texas A&M, and came to the Broncos. I'm sure fully expecting to have a long, all-pro career as a quarterback in the NFL, and then he's a backup. And instead of taking it the wrong way, he was amazing in the way he did whatever he could to help the team to basically, he was leading from the sidelines. He ran the scout team for our defense for years, and he would imitate the quarterback of the other team. Like when we played the Browns, Bernie Kosar had this crazy way of facing one way and throwing the ball the other way, and he would imitate that in practice. The quarterback's left-handed, even try throwing the ball left-handed in practice. I mean, he was unbelievable. He had this, I guess, tradition with me. He'd come up to me before every home game and tell me, "Meck, hold up the class." And I'm like, well, we were drafted the same year. That's probably part of it. But in thinking about it, the other part of it, and then actually talking to Gary, the other part of it was, I've done everything I can to get you ready for this game. I was a scout team quarterback and showed you every look you're going to get in this game. I'm going to be standing on here in the sidelines with my Bronco hat on and my and my clipboard. Go hold up the class.
I mean, that's pretty helpful depending on how good that scout quarterback is. We shouldn't dismiss how important that is.
He was amazing. He was a man. And anytime John went down, Gary was a great player himself, and very different. He wasn't going to throw the ball 60 yards on a rope downfield. He would just pick you apart in little short passes. And if you'd spent the whole week getting ready for John, and all of a sudden there's Gary doing his thing, it's completely different.
Yeah, and then you have obviously these days when you have the running quarterbacks, you might need a different scout quarterback. It's no wonder why he became such a great head coach as well. Um,
Yeah, I think he's still a consultant for the Vikings. I mean, he's still in the league. He won Super Bowls as a coach, as a player. I guess we didn't win any as a player. As a coach, he won Super Bowls in San Francisco and with the Broncos, and maybe one day with with the Vikings. I grew up a Viking fan. Those
yeah,
poor people, they've gotten so close so many times.
well, yeah, we'll talk about that, even though it's painful to talk about how coming close. But the reason I say that about the draft is it's really just it's a coin flip, right? I mean, unless you're coming to a team that's already established, which is maybe let's see, a handful of teams, maybe 4 to 6 teams. You just really never know how good that team's going to be. So it's interesting that they just said, no, I don't want to be a part of that. And now these quarterbacks go to the team that win one game or two, and they can figure, hey, let's see if we can do this, like what Peyton did.
Yeah, it's a completely different system than it was when I played. When I played, there was no free agency. They drafted you. They owned your rights. If you were going to play professional football, you were going to play for them, and that's just how it was. Now, once you get through that first contract, you have a choice, and you can I could have gone home to Minnesota and played for the Vikings if I had wanted to, and that just wasn't an option when I was playing.
Yeah, it's free agencies, and now it's trickled down into college, which is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, I transferred in college. Had to sit out for a year. Worked as a bouncer. I mean, whatever. You do what you got to do. And now it's people are transferring because they're going to get paid more. It's a whole different thing.
It's crazy. It's just cheating in blind sight, and it's just not really what it was intended to do. And until someone does something to change it, I don't see why anyone would stop. But again, that's probably a whole nother conversation. One thing I wanted to ask you from last night watching the basketball game, like everyone talks about how tough everyone was back in the day, right? The game is much different. It's really in football, probably a lot more, but there was, in basketball, Tatum playing with a hurt ankle. The whole game I'm thinking they're going to talk about his ankle. He looked fine when he was stealing the ball and dunking. But I mean, I did a thing on Twitter with James Caan. Remember in the program, are you hurt or are you injured?
Right.
Yeah, what do you think when you see players these days? And always afterwards we hear about some injury that they might have had. I'm like, you're either hurt and you can play, or you're injured and get them off, because if you're injured, then someone else will come on. You shouldn't be playing, right?
Yeah, my approach was always, you're going to be injured. I mean, you're going to be hurt, whatever. That you're going to be nicked, and if your backup is better than you in your physical state, then put my backup in. I'm gonna play until you take me out. And that was I missed 7 games in 12 years, and they were all because I broke my thumb twice one season. So that was 1988. We went to the Super Bowl 86, 87, 89. What happened in 88? Karl missed 7 games. The other team scored 9 points more per game when I was out of the game than when I was in the game.
The game is it's such a game of inches. It really is. That what was the Pacino movie, Any Given Sunday? It really is such a game of inches, and the difference between losing and winning. Even though you guys didn't do very well in the Super Bowl. I mean, they weren't close games.
No, we got hammered.
But it still was. It's just interesting the way sports are, because I look at my favorite team. I'm a Gator, and we went up against the '95 Cornhuskers and got blown out, and then won next year. And I thought that the team that lost was better than the team that won. That's who you were up against that year, and it's just crazy timing that some of the teams that you guys had to go up against were some of the best teams in the history of football.
Yeah, it was matchup issues. It was, it just the typical stuff. It's, we got rookies. You got 2 weeks to prepare and attack those rookies, and then got after us. It was, yeah. When we lost to the Redskins, I sacked their quarterback. He dropped the ball. Roland Jones scooped it up, ran for a touchdown. We'd have been ahead by 18 points, I think it was in the first quarter. They wouldn't have been able to run the ball. They'd have had to pass the ball, and we'd have won that game. But there was an inadvertent whistle. No, there's no replay back then or anything. It was just, okay, inadvertent whistle, play it over.
I think if they blow the whistle, it's dead anyway now. But
right, yeah. I mean, who knows? There's lots of reasons you win and you lose. I go into every situation with call it an all-pro mentality. Prepare thoroughly, perform decisively, evaluate honestly, and adjust accordingly. That was my approach to football. I was gonna, if we won or if we lose, there were things we did wrong. There were things I did wrong. Admit it, fix it, get ready for the next game. And I think there's a lot of people who get stuck when things don't go right. Things are, if you're not running into obstacles, if you're not failing, every once in a while, you're not pushing hard enough.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't like the saying you need to fail. I think that you need to embrace if you do fail, but you don't have to fail. It's possible that you can go to something and you won't fail, but it seems like in sports, they get to the championship, then they lose, and then they're back the next year. We're seeing it now with the Florida Panthers. Last year, they had the number one, the most points in the NHL, lost in the second round. Now this year, they were number 8 seed, and now they're in the final. So I think it's how do you deal with failure? And I think you guys were a real good example of you didn't let it stop you, because you got back. I mean, to get to the Super Bowl, there's a lot of people who never make a Super Bowl.
Yeah, you got to win a bunch of games, right? Yeah, you got to beat some good teams to get to the Super Bowl. There's no question about it. And we were a good team. And like you said, it's every day is not your day. I wish one of those 3 would have been my day, but it wasn't, and that's okay. I kind of look at it almost as a superpower. My business now is as a motivational speaker, and I'll be up in front of 5,000 people giving a speech. And I don't know if your watchers, your listeners have ever done that before, but when you get up in front of a big crowd like that and it's just you, there is unbelievable pressure. And I have failed in front of the largest audience to ever watch a televised football program or any program. And so I'm like, okay, this is not going to be worse than that was. I don't have to worry about that. So I don't have those nerves or that, oh no, what's going to happen if the sun comes up the next day and people get traded and coaches move and things happen. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you're talking about next season and the rookies that are going to be coming in and wins OTAs and whatever, whether you win or whether you lose, which is interesting. One of the things that I've heard from players who have won it all is that they're disappointed in how quickly things move on to the next season.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, but wait a second, we won it. It's like, well, no, this is next year now. It's time to get moving.
You were a pretty prominent figure on the defense, but is there probably a different feeling from someone who's on defense as opposed to maybe the quarterback of a losing Super Bowl, like a Jim Kelly lost 4 in a row, and they just maybe feel more pressure or feel more. I don't.
Yeah, if you take your job seriously, if Jim Kelly doesn't block, Jim Kelly doesn't run routes, Jim Kelly doesn't catch the ball, Jim Kelly doesn't kick the field goals, Jim Kelly doesn't stop the other team. I mean, Jim Kelly does what Jim Kelly does, and that's fine, and that's probably a bigger piece than what I did on our defense, but it's still a small piece of what happens in a pro football game. Saying you win just because you have a better quarterback is not true. You have to have a good team around a good quarterback for sure.
What do you think would have been the difference if you won 2 or 3 of the Super Bowls?
I'd have different rings. The rings I have now are a little smaller. the,
The rings are crazy.
I guess I'd be in the Hall of Fame. That I think that's what has kept me out of the Hall of Fame at this point. But other than that, I can't think of any difference.
That's pretty disappointing, isn't it? I mean, to think that would be the difference, because there's so many great players out there who just never won, and there's people who probably are borderline, and because they're a small part of a bigger team that make it. I'm not. To me, the Hall of Fame, we had this conversation more on baseball, but I find it weird that the Hall of Fame gives you so many years to get elected when your stats are your stats. I mean, your story as a player is over. Nothing else is going to change.
I used to say I can't make any more tackles, although then I found out that for some reason the Broncos didn't count the tackles in playoff games. That wasn't sent in. Okay. So I've actually got almost a full season more of statistics that are, don't count, which is just bizarre.
But don't you think it should be you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not? What happens over the years? It's just different voters.
Yeah. Who knows? The situations. You're right. The voters change. The Hall of Fame thing is. If you look at my statistics are skewed because I played all 7 defensive front positions. There were games I played all 7 positions in one game. So if you match up my statistics against an edge rusher in today's game, I'm not going to have as many sacks as that guy because I was in pass coverage a bunch of times. If you try to count me as an inside linebacker, I don't have as many interceptions because they didn't throw the ball as much back then. I don't have as many tackles because I was rushing the passer a lot. I mean, and on that side, you say, yeah, well, that makes sense. But then we've got Randy Gradishar on the Denver Broncos, who isn't in the Hall of Fame, and that's just a crime. He had more tackles per game than anybody who's ever played the game. I mean, he just was a tackling machine, unbelievable leader, a guy that I got to play with for a couple of years and was just a stud, even at the end of his career. And to keep him out because you think, well, these aren't real statistics. They can't be real because nobody else is that high. Well, that's foolishness too.
Yeah, I'm not. It's a fun little trip. It's good to be a part of the Hall of Fame, but I think it does. I don't know that it means what it did back in the day. And
yeah, well, there wasn't a Denver Bronco in the Hall of Fame until John Elway went in the Hall of Fame. If you don't think that is skewed, then that's ridiculous. So much of it has to do with where the centers of media were. So it was East Coast guys and West Coast guys were in the Hall of Fame, and the guys in the middle, they'd put a couple guys in, but it was East Coast and West Coast guys because that's where the centers of media were.
So Elway goes on to win 2 Super Bowls and then retires. Going to be the best retire, best way to go out. No one does that anymore, right? They play a little bit past when they should. Brady pretty good at getting out. I think Elway is in the conversation for best quarterback of all time, although I'm biased and I'm sure you'll be biased, but he's in the conversation, right?
Oh yeah, no question. To play defense with the understanding that you can give up some extra points, take some chances, do some things that other teams couldn't do, just because we knew if it was close in the fourth quarter, we're going to win that game. I mean, there was no question. I don't know what his numbers were, but when it was 2-minute drill at the end of the game, and it was within a touchdown, we won. Over and over and over and over again. And so instead of we got to watch out, we can't blitz, we can't take any chances. All of a sudden now we can, and that makes a huge difference for a defense.
What was the difference? Obviously, you got a running back like Terrell Davis, and you had some receivers. Was it personnel? I mean, it was that he comes later on and wins.
Yeah, John, and actually any player, their athletic ability tails off towards the end of their career. That's just the way it happens when you age. But you become a smarter player. Having Terrell Davis, having that. if they were ahead in the fourth quarter, it was just run the ball, just beat them down. They had an unbelievable offensive line, very, very, very gifted blocking wide receivers, and people don't count that as much in a wide receiver's repertoire. But if Ed McCaffrey and Rod Smith were downfield blocking for Terrell Davis, and all of a sudden a 5-yard run is a 20-yard run. And that was the difference. I mean, the way those guys, the tight end, Shannon Sharp was a guy that was such a threat as a receiver, but he became a very good blocker too. And that, I remember when he was a rookie, we used to do these blocking drills in practice where the tight ends would block the outside linebackers and the inside linebackers, and so you'd get in line, and we got Clarence Kay, who was just a monster. We got Orson Mobley, who was really a tackle playing tight end. And then you got Shannon Sharp, he was a wide receiver in college. And, everybody was trying to count to 3 so they could line up against Shannon and could shake him out like a rug and throw him out of the way. Because compared to those other guys too. And Shannon just worked so hard to become a good blocker. And he was the last half of his career.
Aside from you and Rulon, obviously, my favorite guy on defense was Stephen Atwater. He was just a monster. Just my favorite player. And I love Treadwell too. He was the first one I know who was kicking without his shoe on.
No, that was Carlos.
Carlos
was the no shoe. Yeah. Yeah. The barefoot kicker. Rich Carlos was the barefoot guy.
Weirdly enough, like when I started watching the Gators, that became everything to me, college. So I started to watch a little bit less pro, and I wasn't crazy about the color change either. I'm obviously an orange and blue guy. I love the old uniforms. Now I think they're okay.
Yeah. There were some great players back then. I got to play with, Simon Fletcher and, before those guys, Reuben Carter and Barney Chavis. And I mean, just some great guys. When we got, my rookie year was, the last year that Edgar Kaiser owned the Denver Broncos, and we had 14 rookies make it that year. Over a quarter of our team was rookies, and the reason was because Mr. Kaiser was trying to sell the team, and he wanted to lower the salary, the amount of money that was going out to salary. So we brought in a bunch of rookies. And the guys that were still left from the Orange Crush team were still there. Instead of really resenting us, they took us under their wings. They taught us not only how to be football players, but taught us how to be men. And I mean, those guys were just some unbelievable guys. Tom Jackson and Randy Gradishar, and like I said, Reuben Carter, Barney Chavis, Bryson Manor, Bob Swenson. That's just some first-class people.
The organization has lost some of the most important people to it, Bolin and Coach Reeves. What do you remember about them?
Well, they're very different people. Coach Reeves was old school, hard nosed, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, Big Ten kind of football guy. If Tom Landry didn't do it, we didn't do it. My way or the highway. I remember we lost 3 games in a row one time. Only once in the 9 years I played for Dan, we lost 3 games in a row. He took away our lunch. We had to brown bag it. We won the next game. And then we got our lunch back. He wanted to win so bad. I mean, we had a guy on our coaching staff who you would swear his only job was to blow a whistle every 5 minutes, because every 5 minutes during practice, we'd switch to what we're doing. So the rest of the time, he's just sitting there spinning the whistle around his finger on a lanyard. But this guy's real job was that he was an unbelievable golfer, and Dan played in all these charity golf tournaments, and this guy was Dan's partner in all these golf tournaments, and Dan won a whole bunch of, he just had to win. That was Dan. And Mr. Bolin was special. Mr. Bolin came in, he bought the team. And instead of changing a lot of things right away, he just was part of it. I mean, he was there all the time. He was in the training room. He was in the locker room. He was out on the practice field. He knew your wife's name. He was talking to the janitor. I mean, he was everywhere. Um, and then once he figured out who was a positive influence on the team and who wasn't, he let go some people and turned things around. I mean, it was amazing his clarity and consistency of who we were and what was important. We were there to win championships. We were there to serve Bronco country, and that if you didn't fit in that box, he'd find other work for you somewhere else. I mean, and it was an amazing example of leadership from the top. And when that disappeared, it became very clear that it was missed. He was the heart and soul of the Denver Broncos for many, many years.
I think in general, we shouldn't really know who owns these teams. And when you do know who owns the teams, it's generally not for good reason, like Dan Snyder and Jerry Jones. But I can't name owners of so many. There's just so few owners you can name in sports, and it's generally because something bad has happened, or they become, I don't want to say a villain, but most fans just don't want to hear from them.
Yeah. Well, Pat was different. I mean, Pat, I think people knew who Pat was because Pat was so involved in the community. That was a big piece of what he understood a professional football team in a community should be, is serving the community in any way we could. And it was clear, and it was consistent, and it was a wonderful place to be. I think one of the, in my job as a professional speaker, I'm out talking to all kinds of different industries, and every single one of them right now is having trouble with retention of qualified employees. That's just a challenge in today's society. And I don't think they understand that if you have these cornerstones of your organization that are alignable, that your people can relate to and buy into, that it makes a huge difference in your retention of employees and their satisfaction in their work. If they can go to work and feel like they're doing something that's worthwhile, it's huge, especially for young people. That was part of being a Denver Bronco. I mean, it was clear, and it was consistent, and it was alignable. That we were there to win. And what athlete can't compete and think, this is what we're here for? What a great guy to play for. And you would think every owner would say, oh well, we're here to win championships.
It's not.
No, a lot of them are there to make money. I mean, if we would have had to put a big sign up in the weight room on Edgar Kaiser owned the team, it would say earn Edgar Kaiser money. That's what it would have said. It wouldn't have said win anything. It would have just said earn this man money.
The money's different now than it was back then too.
That's true.
Buying teams for $7 million and now they're worth $7 billion. It's crazy. It's crazy the way that is. Let's talk about your transition. You retire, and now what?
I went fishing. I spent some time with my kids. I coached my son's high school football team. I did some things that I'd always wanted to do, but it was hard. As a college football player and as a pro football player, you have places you have to be and things you have to do, and there's no question, and there's time frames and there's schedules, and and then all of a sudden one day that's gone. And it's just like, oh, what am I going to do now? And nobody's telling you. My wife tried to step in, but that didn't work out. But we're I did a lot of fishing, did some, like I said, some time with my kids. I mean, it was a challenge, but it was also time. I had 3 concussions the last year. Back then they didn't treat concussions the way they treat them now. And, my brain was scrambled. I wasn't right till April, and it was just time. And the reason I ended up getting the concussions, I was just a half step short from what I used to be. I never was fast anyway. And then when I lost that half a step with age, it just wasn't a safe place for me to be.
And that's when you knew.
That's when I knew it was like, it's time to go.
I don't do it.
Mr. B tried to talk me into coming back. Let me give you an example of what Mr. B was like to work for. Mr. B, I go into his office to say thank you and goodbye, and I'm done. Just let him know, make it official. And he tries to talk me into coming back. And they had signed me as a defensive end in training camp. They had replaced me as a linebacker. They couldn't get a pass rush during training camp, so they assigned me as a defensive end. So I'm in his office at the end of the season, and he says, Karl, if you'd have played defensive end at the level you played linebacker, you'd have made all your incentives. Here's a check for all your incentives as I'm leaving his office and never to come back again. I mean, just what an unbelievable guy to play for. He was just like, if you did what you could for him, he would do whatever he could for you.
Isn't it weird, the incentives, like now that you bring that up, you have all these incentives, but they're very controllable. Like you could not play someone or not throw to me, that's just weird. Incentives should be, hey, I'm incentivizing you to do this, but shouldn't have any say on whether or not you get to do that. Doesn't that seem weird to you?
Yeah. I mean, the coach's job is to try to win. So you would think they would play a player regardless of what his incentives are and all that kind of thing. But you get down to the end of the year and you're like, well, if we lost a game, maybe we'd move up a step in the draft or, whatever, or this guy doesn't, if we don't play him or if we don't throw him the ball, he won't get all his incentives for, we'll save a little money. Sometimes those things happen. Those things happen in dysfunctional organizations. That they didn't happen in the Denver Broncos at that time.
Who's worth tanking for? I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
The last one I thought, was maybe Peyton Manning, but I don't know. I just don't see who's
and Peyton Manning had his rookie year. He was horrible.
I
mean, in today's world, they probably would have fired him or traded him or something instead of teaching him how to play the game.
So being a Gator, I hated Peyton Manning. We beat him 3 or 4 times. My brain it's too far. It was a long time ago. I look. Sure. I'm older than I look, but but when he came into the NFL, I loved him. He's one of my favorite players outside of the Broncos, and then he became a Bronco, which actually took over for Tebow, who I thought, look, Tebow, you got to sign Peyton Manning. When you can sign Peyton Manning, doesn't matter. He got the raw deal, I think, elsewhere, not from the Broncos themselves. You get a chance to get Peyton Manning, you get Peyton Manning. I don't know anyone who can question that, but it's just interesting when there's just teams that I hate, and then maybe they get a player and you're like, I like to root for them. It's the main reason why I don't play fantasy football. I stopped a long time ago because my biases are just way too strong when you're watching. But do you have any of these teams that you kind of root against still? I mean, you were hated, the Browns, or is it just it's such a totally different organization now?
Yeah.
The Raiders.
Yeah, maybe. I got leg whipped in the Super Bowl against San Francisco. They tore cartilage in both my knees, and it was on purpose, and it was a cheap shot. And I have never liked the 49ers since then. And then, ironically, Mike Shanahan's son ends up their coach, and all these Bronco guys are there, and it's changed obviously and tremendously from back in the day. So now I'm okay with them. I don't have any. I was drafted 40 years ago, right? So it's been a while. I can get over stuff.
Do you enjoy watching football still?
I do. It's a different game, but it's an evolving game. It should be. My grandfather was a little All-American at University of North Dakota, and I'm watching football with him on Thanksgiving. Back in the day, Notre Dame used to play USC every Thanksgiving, and I was sitting there, and he hated Notre Dame because the University of North Dakota was the real UND, not those guys.
I agree with him.
Right. So I made the mistake of saying, Grandpa, these guys are really big. I don't know if you could play nowadays. My grandfather was like 175 pounds and played nose guard and tack and center. And he said, hell, boy, I played when it was a man's game. We didn't have no pads in our pants. We didn't have no face mask. I had to play both ways. So yeah, the game evolves and changes, and that's kind of how I feel about the guys playing now. We were trying to hurt each other. We were trying to knock each other out. I mean, that was, if you could hit the quarterback and land on top of them, that's what you did.
We were talking the other day about the hockey players who used to play without a helmet.
Sure. Crazy. Yeah. I grew up with Gump Worsley as the goalie for the Minnesota North Stars, and Gump Worsley didn't wear a face mask, and he's a goalie. His face is all full of cuts and scratches. It's all messed up.
I want to go back again with the transition. You knew you were going to take some time off. Did you have a plan?
I did not. I had seen a lot of guys try to set up their retirement and during their career, and it started their retirement quicker than it would have if they would have put all their attention on their career instead of on their retirement. So I saved money. That was part of it. As I got through my career, we had some money put away, and no, I did not. I was a pre-med major. I was going to go to medical school, took the entrance exam, qualified to go to medical school. Would have if they would have cut me. I made the team and played for 12 years. And by the time I retired, there's kids at home, and I wasn't going to go back to medical school. So I really didn't know what I was going to do.
And how did you decide? I mean, you're
you know what? I had some opportunities to speak and just really enjoyed it. The pattern of what you go through as a professional speaker is very similar to what you go through as a professional football player. You prepare for the next client. You make some adjustments to what you normally do based on what they need. You perform at a high level for a short period of time. You evaluate what went on. You repeat what went well. You throw out what didn't go well, and you get ready for the next one. I mean, it's football except without the injuries.
What's the one thing that you lived through or encountered or experienced that makes you a good keynote speaker and motivational speaker?
Wow. I think my story. I was not a great football player as a kid. I was just one of the guys. In ninth grade, I was the smallest starter on our football team. I grew really late. I was as a junior in high school. I played JV football. I didn't make the varsity team. As a senior, I made the varsity team. I was all state as a tight end and a defensive end, but I was only 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. Not big enough to play major college football. So I went to Augustana College in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The Vikings, right? I went to a little Division II school on a 1/3 scholarship, which they took away after 2 years. I left Augustana. I walked down at the University of Minnesota. I earned a scholarship there. A week later, I tore a ligament in my knee. They tried to take the scholarship back. I ended up as a junior. I led the Big Ten in sacks, tied with Andre Tippett. And
Tippett was Buffalo.
Yeah, he's an All-Pro outside linebacker with Buffalo. He played at Iowa in the Big Ten. The Broncos saw me because they drafted Chris Hinton first in 1983. That's who they traded for John Elway. And Chris Hinton was a guard, played for Northwestern. I had a couple of sacks on him. They ate him up all game long. They're like, well, if we're going to draft this guy first, this guy's still around in the 12th round. Maybe we should use it and draft him. And I ended up on the Broncos team. Never played linebacker in my life until my third year in the NFL. Made the Pro Bowl as an All-Pro linebacker that year. Overcoming. Success is overcoming obstacles on the way to your dreams. That's what it is. I loved the game. I was not, I run a 4.9 40, but I found out early on in my career, if I took the first step in the right direction before anybody else does, all the angles change in my favor. And that's not just on a football field. That's in business. That's in relationships. That's reality. It's
the shortcut in a good way, not cheating anyone.
Yeah. I mean, people don't rise to the top without failure. People don't rise to the top without challenges. It just doesn't happen. People sell themselves short constantly. I mean, my desire, my passion, my mission is I'm going to be the greatest football player that ever played the game. And I saw unbelievable guys come to training camp every single year, just so much more talented than I was. But it's not about talent. It's about vision and where you're going, and applying yourself every single day. So yeah, that's why I'm a, a motivational speaker.
And what your motivation is more, how much is it telling my story and trying to motivate? Some of the best motivational speakers I've seen was telling their story, and some of the worst motivational I've seen is someone who gets hired and they have like this canned speech and they throw in the name of whoever they're speaking to. It just sounds weird.
Am I in Boise today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time tailoring what I'm going to say. I've got about 40 5-minute stories that I can put together and cut and paste depending on the group and the direction they need me to go. I think the difference between those two motivational speakers you were talking about is one of them is serving themselves and one of them is serving the client. And to me, it's all about the client. I come in early, I stay late, I'm signing autographs, I'm posing for photos, I'm playing in their golf tournament, I'm doing whatever. I'm sitting through the speeches before my speech and after I'm there. I'm part of the conference, and because I want to know who these people are. It's one thing to talk to a meeting professional and get their perspective of what's needed and what's not needed. And it's a whole nother thing to talk to the members of that association or the employees of that corporate group. So I definitely try to personalize my comments. Obviously there are some things that I'm going to repeat, but the stories are the stories, and then between the stories, that's the bridges that tie the stories together, that you point it all back at that client and those people. So yeah, you're not going to get the same speech out of me twice.
Do you have a most memorable moment on stage?
On
Something
stage?
happened, someone said something, someone asked you a question that kind of had you for a loss. I mean, what?
Yeah, usually the probably, and real early in my career, probably one of the things that made me feel like I could do this. This is a viable job. I'm speaking in a middle school gymnasium. It was one of those built in the 1980s gymnasiums. Remember the old bomb shelter kind of uh, school buildings where they just had little slots of light would come in, and everything else is just cement. So I'm in one of those, and the power goes out, and I'm speaking to 200 middle schoolers, and I just kept going, and no amplification, no light, and no grab ass for 20 minutes more. I'm like, I could do that. If I can hold a middle school audience for 20 minutes, I can do anything. So yeah, that
Who do you think?
was a big turnaround for me.
Who do you think you're most impactful to? Is it middle school? Is it working class? Is it professional athletes?
Wow. Yeah, most of my presentations are for associations and for corporate groups. A lot of the corporate groups are male dominated: construction, lumber, aluminum extruders, whatever. I mean, just working class guys that understand sports, look up to me because I was a professional athlete, but also can relate their struggles daily to the things I'm talking about. But I've had a chance to speak for all kinds of groups and can tweak it and make it work. I spoke for the Obstetric Nurses Association. Me and my dad were the only two males in the room at that time. So yeah, anything's possible.
I think everything is applicable somewhere that you get value out of it. But I think the big problem, and I'm probably as guilty as anyone, is when something bad happens, we react. When we get motivated and sit in front of someone who says, we get all hyped and we're going to do this. And then, 3 days later, we're on to the next thing. Why can't we have sustained motivation? I mean, what?
Yeah, that's a challenge. That really is. It's a challenge, and it's what keeps me out working. Truthfully, I mean, if somebody just had to pick up a book and read it and say, okay, I get it now. I the amazing thing is in my preparation for these presentations, I'm reminding myself over and over and over the same stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, man, I let down there, didn't I? It helps to be reminded. It helps to just be prodded. It helps to come from a different angle too. I've got friends in the National Speakers Association who are disabled folks. I've got friends who are, ex fighter pilots. I've got friends who are, you know, built entrepreneurs that built unbelievable businesses, and they come at the same concepts. Reality is, and the reality and the truth are reality and the truth. You just come at it from different angles. So I'm gonna maybe touch some people in a different way than those other people are gonna touch people, and it's just a constant struggle for everybody to try and continue to fight. And that, that's my goal. My goal is that they're going to walk out of there with 2 or 3 things that they're going to say, yeah, that hit home. I need to apply that when I get back to work. I need to apply that when I'm speaking with my kids. I need to apply that when I'm dealing with the community, whatever it is.
Yeah, you wrote a book, Heart of a Student Athlete. You can get it on your website, which is Scrolling the Cost. How did that come to be?
Yeah, that I have dyslexia. So for those of you who don't know what dyslexia is, you don't know your left from your right, and it's really hard to write. Spelling and stuff is challenging, and it took me 5 years to write this little book. But it's won some national awards. It's the same concepts I'm talking about today: teamwork, courage, dedication, desire, honesty, and forgiveness, goal setting, universal, unchanging keys to success. And these it's I'll sell about 20% of my audience that sees me speak, and I don't know if they want an autograph or if they want to have the book, whatever. Yeah, it's been a big part of my business for a long time. It's time to write a new one. I've got a lot of different stories and different directions to go. It's just hard to get started on that.
Yeah, you got to just do it. That's the.
There we go. Yeah. Well, like I said, I took 5 years. I'm a decorated author with dyslexia. I had speech therapy as a kid in middle or in elementary school, and I'm a professional speaker. And I'm a slow white boy from the suburbs, and I was an all-pro linebacker. So hey, anything's possible.
We know some ghostwriters we can put you in touch with.
Yeah, I did that in my first book. With somebody who wrote it for me. I just recorded this stuff, and I was much happier with my second book. I think if you're going to put something out there that's going to be out there, that'll outlive you. I want that to be something that I actually did, not something somebody else did with my name on it.
Oh man, I'm drawing a blank here. I had talked to someone who's writing a book with a ghostwriter who is a Bronco, and I was trying to talk to him. I gotta remember it. It was in the Win Again Academy with Mark Moyer. I met him in there. He was doing just to speak in front of a networking group, which we do again tonight. Win Again Academy with Mark Moyer. It's just a networking group. People come together and they bring people on to sort of share their stories, similar to what you're doing here. And in my mind is blank. It's like we're in the afternoon here, and I'm in Florida, and it's not working. But I'll have to remember what that was. I have the same thing. I have ideas about books, and I used to have ideas about things, and for me, it was like the second I hit that first roadblock, I was like, it's too hard. And then I started my company, Ticket Time Machine. I said, I don't care what happens here, I'm doing this. And I just was going to push through everything. But I think that some of it, it's circumstance, it's timing, it's, how passionate and are you about whatever that is that you're doing. To write a book, I think most people think, I'll write a book, maybe I'll become rich and famous. But that's not really why you should write a book, because it's
if you got to have a message. In my mind anyway, there's got to be a purpose behind it, and something that that's pushing you something you need to get out. Your view on something, and it, for me anyway, it was. I started going to the National Speakers Association meetings in Colorado, and everybody had a book. And I'm looking around, and they're like, "Where's your book?" What do you mean? I need to have a book. So it was. I looked at it as my ticket to becoming a real professional speaker. So I spent a ton of time on it, and it's a 150-page book. I probably wrote 1,000 pages. Yeah. Just trim it down until you get it to the point of where it is. It is what it is.
That's what people have to do. But it feels like all this stuff that we're hearing in books or speech is common sense. We've heard it before. We might already know it, but there's power to reinforcing it and reminding. I mean, these are all the things, like, we already know what we have to do, but we need to hear it maybe from someone else.
No question. Yeah, no, I'm if you're an adult and you're sitting at one of my speeches, you are not going to hear something you haven't heard before.
Yeah.
You can't teach adults something new, I don't think. At least not unless you're an industry expert and you're talking about some sort of cutting edge technology or whatever. That's not me. I'm there to talk about the things that truly matter, and that's your psyche, your motivation, the direction you're going with your life. And it's something I struggle with because I'm a person too. So there's great value in it for me, hearing other people speak and reminding me from a different angle. So yeah, no question, Matt.
Yeah, I think this stuff is real helpful and useful because it's a playbook. And I think a lot of people try and sell you the idea of a playbook, like, here's how you need a sales playbook, and here's this. But I don't think those work. I don't think there really is a playbook for all that stuff. But there is a playbook on sort of the right things to be doing, and you're not going to win all the time.
No, you're certainly not going to win all the time. If you expect to win all the time, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yeah.
My dad used to say the best part about winning is watching the loser cry. And then he'd follow that up with, what could you have done different to win this time?
That's a good, yeah. I mean, I normally celebrate and not worry about the other team, but
still my little brother used to scream and cry when we played board games and he'd lose, and then my dad would pull that out.
There is something satisfying about beating someone who maybe even wanted it more than you, which you hope it is not the case often, but you see the pain of the loss on them, which just sort of makes you feel that much better about your victory.
Yeah. There's to me the process is what it is about. Your preparation, and then when what you've prepared for actually happens, and you're able to make a play, or you're able to make a sale, or you're able to have a client be thrilled with what happened, and you and it's because of that preparation. It's because of that time you spent, and that to me is the rewarding piece of it. I knew this was going to happen, and I was ready for it.
You made 3 Super Bowls, but you guys lost them all.
We got stomped.
So it's going to be an interesting answer here. You made the Pro Bowl 6 times. You got drafted. What's your finest moment as an athlete?
To me, winning the first AFC Championship game in Cleveland, the drive game, was that game. Just to get to the Super Bowl for the first time was probably the highlight of my football career. We went into that game and it was us against the world, man. They were throwing dog bones. There were dog bones like 4 inches, 5 inches deep on our sidelines. They were throwing at us. We had to wear helmets on the sideline. It was nuts.
It's not the same anymore in Cleveland.
No, in today's game, they'd all been arrested and thrown out. But that's
Raiders fans are pretty. They were bad in Oakland. I went to them in Vegas. It wasn't. Eagles fans are pretty.
Eagles fans were definitely not. The game plan going into play in Philadelphia is take some chances early, because if you get get a lead, that crowd will turn on the Eagles in a minute.
First Bronco game I ever went to, because I was in Jersey, was at Old Veterans Stadium against the Eagles, and I was wearing my Elway jersey, and I was young. Man. I couldn't have been, maybe I was less than 15, maybe 12, 13, and my dad took me, and you guys lost like 30-0.
Wow.
And I was getting roasted on the walk back to the car. We just lost. I'm like, leave me. I think there was a Chargers fan there who was yelling at me. It was not a great memory for my first Broncos game, but
no, I don't remember that game.
So I kind of seen down here. I was in actually Shula's suite because I know his daughter when Tebow made the comeback down here in Miami, which was an unbelievable game. How involved are you with the Broncos organization?
You know, when the Broncos rent out the stadium for events and stuff, or when the Broncos run events there where they need a speaker, I'll end up there quite often. They've got a thing where they have game sponsors, and one of the options for a game sponsor is to have a film study, and they'll have a couple of retired guys go over how we look at film and go through that preparation, performance, evaluation, and adjustment piece that I talked about already. And it's I'm probably doing Bronco stuff 20 times a year.
That's good. And do you see the guys?
Not really. I don't. A couple of times a year, I'll end up down at the at training camp. Steve Atwater does a podcast at training camp, and he'll ask me every year to be down for that. The Broncos have their alumni golf tournament this weekend. I'll be at that. So yeah, I see guys at events all the time, but not so much when I'm working for the Broncos. I'll see one guy or two guys, but I don't see a big group of guys.
I forgot to mention you're in the Ring of Honor for the Broncos, so that's probably a pretty good highlight. If you could replace yourself with someone who's not in there, who would you say deserves to be in there?
You know, I'd say Rulon Jones. Rulon Jones was as devastating a one-on-one pass rusher as anybody I've ever seen. The guy was just like a human eel or snake or something. He would get all twisted up and go through. They had to double team him about half my sacks were because they were double teaming Rulon and forgot about me. Rulon was unbelievable.
Two of you really anchored that defense. Wouldn't have made the Super Bowls and done everything without you guys. House on Fire, what are you taking? You can take one piece of every family, pets, they're all out. You can take one piece of memorabilia.
Wow.
What are you taking? I see you got some stuff there. You got
some stuff behind me here.
Jerseys. What would you take?
It's all.
I know it's not replaceable, but it's still
maybe the picture of my dad and my grandpa and me and my little brother with all the fish back there.
Oh, that's great.
That was my grandpa was my favorite guy growing up when I was a kid, and having that picture up there is nice.
Did he get to see you play?
No, he passed when I was young. When I was 12. But yeah, I'm still a big fisherman and a hunter because of Grandpa.
What do you like to fish?
Anything. Growing up in Minnesota, there's lakes everywhere. We're fishing a lot, and out here I do some fly fishing. I've got a buddy coming up from Minnesota actually next week, 2 weeks, and we're going to be doing some fly fishing. So yeah, I like doing that.
We do offshore fishing here.
I'm going out with a buddy going down to Mexico, going out of San Diego, going down to Mexico, doing some offshore fishing.
Yeah, it's fun. I like to catch tuna and some snappers. Pretty good down here. That's. Have you been to the Minnesota University of Minnesota? Has a real nice new stadium. Have you been there?
I have, and actually that stadium is an exact duplicate of the Colorado State Stadium. Colorado State built theirs, and Minnesota used the same exact plan to build the one in Minneapolis there.
That is a very underrated place to go watch a game in Fort Collins. We we take a trip every year. And one year we do college football, pro football, and pro baseball. And when we went to Colorado, we actually saw the Buffaloes play on a Thursday. And on Saturday, we went to Fort Collins, and it's a really cool atmosphere there. I think it was the first place we actually were able to buy beer at a college. This is a decade ago.
Yeah,
it was really a fun day down in it's Fort Collins.
Fort Collins, yeah.
See the Rams play. That was a fun experience.
Yeah, I had the chance to speak for the Gophers a couple of times. One of them in their stadium, and then the other one here in Colorado when they came out here to play Colorado. So just kind of a little pregame fire-up speech for the kids.
Can the Broncos win with Russell Wilson at quarterback?
Of course. A lot of teams have won with Russell at quarterback.
I'm saying now. Russell.
No, yeah. I mean, not if you try to make him into Aaron Rodgers. No. Yeah. If you let him be Russell Wilson, yeah. I think so. I'm encouraged by his weight loss. He's obviously worked really hard. That doesn't happen by accident. He looks like he's in great shape. He's ready to do some old Russell stuff, running around a little bit.
It's weird to see. I thought Melvin Gordon would have been a much better. Like, he kind of fell off. I think injuries, and now we see. Who knows with Jerry Jeudy? I think he could be one of the best receivers in the league, but he had some injury too. So it's who knows with the NFL? Anything can happen, right?
Right. I think the equipment's, or not the equipment, but the training staff and the trainers themselves, the guys they got in there doing all the physical therapy and stuff has all changed now. Ultimately it comes down to, are you physically fit? Are your muscles balanced? Are you flexible enough? Are you able to take what it takes to play in a professional football season? And it is a brutal grind, even in today's game. It's a big men running into each other, and if you're not ready for it, you're not going to make it through. And when such a high percentage of your players are having issues, there's a reason for it. It's not just luck. It's how they're preparing. And I'm very pleased that there was a real shuffling of that system and that group, because it's been bad for 3-4 years of just injury after injury after injury. And that's the training staff is who that is. That's not the coaches, and that's not the players.
It's time for the Broncos to make some noise again. So let's hope this is the season. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question everybody gets. You could spend a day with anybody in the world, 24 hours. They have to be alive, and you can't be related to them. Who would you choose, and what would you guys do?
Huh. They have to be alive.
Have to be alive, and you can't be related to them.
Can't be related to them.
Take away the easy answers.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the first that comes to mind.
Yeah, man. Probably my brother Eric. My brother Eric has lived in Saudi Arabia now for 10 years. And when he's back in the States, he's spending time with his kids. So I don't know that I've had a day with him for 20 years. I'd like to spend some time with Eric.
I hope you get one soon. It was supposed to be no family. Anyone family?
Yeah, no family. Sorry.
That would be great. I hope you could spend a day with him soon.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm still thinking, man.
Just what's the first name that comes to your mind?
Coach Collier, maybe. Joe Collier was the defensive coordinator for the Broncos when I was playing, and I know he's around still, but I just haven't seen him in a long time.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, Coach Collier would be good.
Well, I appreciate your time here. I hope to someday get to listen to you speak in public. Check out the website, karlmecklenburg.com. Heart of a Student Athlete is his book. We can find it on there. And we look forward to seeing what comes up for this season. and wish you well on the speaking tour.
I appreciate it. Go Broncos. Well, yeah, I'm excited for the new coaching staff and the new direction. It's a hard thing, is it the chicken or is it the egg, right? Are you bad because you change coaches over and over and over again, or do you just change coaches over and over again because you're bad? I don't know. I think they're going to stay with this guy for a while.
I hope so. Competition's tough. Mahomes and the Chiefs, and Allen and the Bills, and Burrow and the Bengals. Those are solid teams that you expect to do very well this year. So
I agree, Matt. One of the differences that free agency has brought on, though, is that those guys got to get paid. Yeah. And once you pay somebody, then you can't pay somebody else, and then all of a sudden, you're not as good. So it's really hard to build a dynasty in today's NFL just because of the salary cap and that free agency piece.
Yeah, I agree. Will be interesting to see what happens. We got another episode tomorrow, so join us. Have a great night. Check out Mark Moyer, Winning An Academy. There's an event tonight, networking event at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Thanks a lot.